All right, I believe that, can we hear well enough? We're going to try something, and well, first of all, let me start off by saying that if you're visiting here, we are so honored that you come out and been our guest. I know that Vacation Bible School is normally for the children, but those that carry the children home will instill far more into their lives spiritually than what they'll receive here if they do the proper job. And the way that we do the proper job is we've got to be educated ourselves. And this is not the only avenue to educate yourself, but it is definitely one. And we are honored for any guest that's come our way. And quite frequently, we forget about our members. But for those who have been here every night or just one night, we're so thankful that you've supported the work that the eldership has put forth. So thank you for coming. I want to say thank you to the elders. Brother Jimmy came to me and asked me if I would teach this lesson. And it is true that the person that learns the most is the person who does the lesson. So I just hope that I can do it justice. And I want to start in what may seem to be a very odd place. I don't want to start the book of Daniel. And I make no bones about it. I'll tell you what I'm doing. Maybe you have known someone before that gave the concept that if things are going great, you must be in good standing with God. And if things are going bad, you must have done something wrong. We definitely know that Job was accused of that very thing. But I think that permeates our society today. I see individuals that, they get a new car and maybe they put blessed on the front of their car, as though this is a sign that God and I are walking hand in hand. And I dare say, if you've never read the Bible, except for what we're studying this week, the book of Daniel, I believe you would walk away with that very concept. Let me ask you a question. I've got some technology going on here. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These individuals were thrown into a fiery furnace, right? Were they injured? Did you know that not even the smell of smoke was on them? Did you know that their hair was not singed? Now, what do you think? You think that if you're walking in a right relationship with God, if that was to happen to you, is that truly what you expect to happen? You get thrown into a furnace and everything's okay. My realistic side says that's probably not going to work out well. But it did in the book of Daniel. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I get caught up whenever I'm on my phone and there's a thread and you go to the next thread and you never know what you're going to see, but somehow, I don't know if AI has fed this in, but animals will come up. And I've seen where individuals before have reached into a lion's cage and maybe was going to try to pet the lion, and the lion would grab hold of their arm. And to be honest with you, it's no match. It really isn't. The person is like a rag doll being pulled, and maybe it's the weird side of me, but one time that popped up and I was watching it, and the lion actually pulled the person's arm off and then went over, laid down, and started eating the man's arm. How about it? If you're walking faithfully with God, thrown into a lion's den, you think, hey, look, nothing will really happen. Once again, my realistic side says that's not going to work out very well. So the book of Daniel gives us two traumatic events, and both of them worked out great. So it almost fosters the ideal, if you've not read anything else, that that's the way that it works. I'd like to go to Hebrews chapter 11. Encourage you to turn to it. It is 40 verses. I was born in 1964, therefore certain parts of the body is not what it used to be, and the vocal cords is one of those things. So if I stood here and read 40 verses, by the time we got to Daniel, my voice might be a little cracked. So what I've done is I've brought a wireless speaker that I use frequently in some Bible studies, and I'd just like for it to be professionally narrated. Actually, if we can have a professional reader, I really enjoy that. So we're going to see if there's any feedback on this. If there is, then I'm going to set it right over there and let it play for us. But for any who may be watching at home, then that's why I'd like to try to use the mic. So Hebrews chapter 11, it will be the entire chapter.
Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. By faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. By faith Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. By faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said,
that in Isaac shall thy seed be called.
Accounting that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. By faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith Jacob, when he was a-dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph, and worshipped, leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel, and gave commandment concerning his bones. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured, as seeing him who is invisible. Through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians, essaying to do, were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down, after they were compassed about 7 days. By faith the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she had received the spies with peace. And what shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, and of Barak, and of Samson, and of Jephthah, of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented. Of whom the world was not worthy, they wandered in deserts and in mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect.
All right, I'd like for us to, hopefully you could hear that well enough. Did that work? Okay, thank you. I'd like for us to go to verse 32 of Hebrews chapter 11. But before we do that, I apologize. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, the very start of it. This verse, to be honest with you, it perplexes me. But if you study the Bible, those things that perplex you, you have to come to some resolution as to what it means. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the pursuit of things hoped for. In my mind, that makes sense. Somebody said, no, you've missed it. Okay, all right. I believe that is a true statement. That faith is pursuing what is right. James would say faith without works is dead. So I might ought to say a live faith would involve pursuing what you believe and what you want. So faith is the substance of things hoped for, the pursuit of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Isn't that the story of Daniel? Wasn't Daniel pursuing pleasing God the whole time? Move down to verse 6. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. So without faith, without this pursuit of what God's will is, it's impossible to please God. Now that destroys this concept of, well, I mentally accept Jesus, but my life just doesn't match up with that. That wasn't Daniel's life. It's a lot of people's lives that I meet on a daily basis. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Is just saying that I believe in God enough? Hebrews chapter 11 verse 6 says no. It's the individual that diligently seeks God's will. And if we try it any other way, the verse starts off saying it is impossible. That faith and work are tied hand in hand. And as we get to the book of Daniel, we will see that over and over and over again. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 4. Do you remember two boys, Cain and Abel? Let me see here. Cain was the person that brought the if you will, the fruit of the land. And Abel brings an animal sacrifice. Which of those two did it correctly? Abel. So apparently he's in good graces with God, right? He did what God asked. What was the result? He was killed. Boy, so doing what was right carried with it inherent risk. Yeah, that's right. Now, I would like to come down because if you made Hebrews chapter 11, boy, you're feeling very, very good. I mean, this is the Holy Spirit saying, by the way, I want you to look at these people's lives and what they did. Perfect? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, one of the people that I do a Bible study with is in the room, and they will be very familiar with Jacob, who is later known as Israel. And as we were in our study, it's almost humorous how that Jacob says to God, now if you do all that you've said you'll do, then you'll be my God. I'm shocked that he made the cut. I really am. When you read the story, you're like, wow. But I believe what that is showing us is perfection is not required. Now, willful sin is never permissible, but perfection is not expected. Why do I say that? We could go, we won't for time's sake, Abraham. You know, Abraham had some flaws. Sarah. You know, there's a whole tribe of people that would not exist. A lot of troublemakers. If Sarah and Abraham would have simply done it God's way. But it's like, God, you know, you said that you was going to promise us with a child. So we're tired of waiting. So we're just going to circumvent the system. I see verse 22. I'm just glancing down. Joseph, I'll be honest with you, I've never found anything that Joseph done wrong. Some people will claim that with his dreams that he shouldn't have told them. Well, God gave him the dreams, and at the end, they played a vital role. So, and then we get down to verse 32. And I'd like for you to follow along. And what shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson, and of Japheth, David also. Boy, could we say some stuff about David coming up short on occasions? Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promise, stopped the mouth of lions. Now, when I read stop the mouths of lions, I believe that brings us to our lesson tonight. Unless you know of someone else that is famously known for stopping the mouths of lions. Verse 34, quench the violence of fire. I believe that was chapter 3. Individuals went into a fiery furnace and was not harmed. So I believe that right here, we almost have the book of Daniel back to back. Verse 34 continuing, escape the edge of the sword. Out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in flight. Turned to fight their enemies of the aliens. Women received their dead, raised to life again, and others were tortured. Wait a minute. Hebrews chapter 11, this is the hall of faith? And some of these individuals were tortured? Well, surely if you made this chapter, you're righteous. Righteousness does not equate with trouble-free lives. Not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. Verse 36, and others had trials of cruel mocking and scourgings, yea, moreover, the bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawn asunder. Out of all of these, this one right here is interesting to me. They claim that this may be talking about Isaiah the prophet that was sawn in two. They claim that one of the methods would be you would stuff an individual into a hollow log, and then you take a bow saw and just start sawing the log and go through it. Man, okay, I'm serving you, God, but this is my end? Really? Verse 38 has always just floored me. Of whom the world was not worthy. Can you imagine if that was said about you? That you lived a life that the Holy Spirit would inspire. The world was not worthy of that individual. Boy, these are some fascinating people. So, what I wanted to establish with Hebrews chapter 11, as I had stated earlier, was we need to remove from our minds that if I obey the gospel and I'm a faithful Christian, that life is easy. That I don't have problems. That God will take care of everything. There's people that has not accepted that. You know why? A tragedy can happen in their life and they abandon God. How could God let this happen to me? I mean, after all, I'm serving Him. So when we venture now into the book of Daniel, hopefully you can appreciate that the God of heaven does not give you a pass just because you're faithful to Him. Because Daniel sure did not get the pass. So now, we won't do any more flipping. Let's go to Daniel chapter 6. I would like to do an overview of the book of Daniel super fast, only because we may have someone that was only able to make it tonight. Daniel chapter 1 is when Daniel is taken out of Judah and brought to Babylon. You might ask, well, how in the world did he even get here? Okay. This is about 605 years before Christ comes on the scene. Daniel and other noble youths are taken captive in the first Babylonian deportation. Daniel is somewhere, according to the experts, I was not around during these days to give firsthand, around 15 to 17 years old, the experts claim. That's mind-boggling to me. Because a child is probably not going to be really teachable as far as intellectually until maybe 5 years old. Is that a fair statement? I don't claim to be an expert on this, but so if they're 5, then if he was 15, he's got 10 years. From 5 to 15 to learn everything that he's going to know. Why? Because he's being enrolled into the school of the Babylonians as soon as he gets there. He's given a new name. He can't go back and say, hey, Mom, what was it again that you said? Dad, can you remind? No. His parents, I would have loved to have met him. I would have loved to say, hey, look, can you tell me how you took from 5 to 15, let's say, and crammed enough godly knowledge into your son that he turns out to be like this? What fantastic people they must have been. King Jehoiakim was the king of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar II was the king of Babylon. There is a Nebuchadnezzar I, lived about 499 years before Nebuchadnezzar II. So, from all I can understand, no relation. Definitely not dad, because obviously so much time has passed. So that's where we are in chapter 1. He gets there. We know about the feast. He refuses to take of the food. Very dangerous, as Brother Roger Campbell pointed out. 2 Kings chapter 25. Just read it. Nebuchadnezzar was a very cruel individual. So when Nebuchadnezzar says, now listen, I've got these boys here, and I want them to eat this food, for Daniel to say, can I ask a favor? We don't want to eat that food because it would defile us. That was a risky move. It was also very tempting, I would assume. I'm certain the king probably ate the better food, and the peasants probably ate the lesser pleasant food. That's normally the way it works. So there would be that appearance of the food. So Daniel asked, look, I don't want to eat the food. Now, 2 Kings chapter 25 just tells us of the ruthlessness of Nebuchadnezzar. Roger had mentioned he conquers the king, has him stand beside him, brings his sons before him, has his sons killed with the edge of a sword, and then gouges the eyeballs out of the king, so that will be the very last thing he would ever see, and then puts him in shackles and carries him off as a prisoner. Don't know that I want to fool with that fella. Move to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, Daniel interprets Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Well, we remember that story if we were here. He has this dream of a statue and head of gold, and it works all the way down to the feet. And each layer of this statue represents a various kingdom that's coming into place. Daniel is able to interpret the dream, and he's starting to find favor now. Chapter 3 is an interesting chapter in the book of Daniel, because the book of Daniel in chapter 3 does not even mention Daniel. I have questions myself as to where was Daniel in chapter 3? It seems as though, a little speculation here, you can draw whatever you want, but Nebuchadnezzar, he has this dream, and he understands these various kingdoms. And then, chapter 3, he erects this golden statue and says, now listen, everyone, when the music plays, must bow down and worship it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they didn't do it. I have to wonder, did they stand out like a sore thumb? Here's all these people bowing down, and they're just standing there. So the king says, wait a minute, look, boys, did you miss this? What my orders were? So I'm going to give you another chance. And I want us to turn to Daniel, and I said that I would not do this. This should be one of the few times. Daniel chapter 3, verse 14 through 18. Daniel chapter 3, verse 14 through 18. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now, if you be ready, in other words, I'm giving you a second chance here, boys. If you be ready, that at the time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psalmistry, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. In other words, that'll be good. You know, maybe you just misunderstood the instructions. One of my favorite words is next in my Bible, but. You know, if y'all fall down and worship, then we can let this minor matter pass. But here's the contrast. But if you worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Boys, I mean, this fiery furnace, it's going to be your end. So you gotta make up your mind, who is your God? The one that I've built, that's standing here in front of us, or this one that nobody has seen? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. In other words, king, we don't need a few minutes to discuss this amongst ourselves. We're not careful about what we're about to say. We're confident in what we're about to say. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. In other words, either he's going to save us from that fiery furnace, or we're going to burn up there. But king, you can understand something right now. After this exercise, Either we will be gone or our God will save us. We're not concerned about your threats or anything else. Verse 18. But if not, and there's a reason I'm reading this for Daniel chapter 6. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. As you read verse 18, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do not know the outcome of this fiery furnace. We know the end of the story. Oh yeah, boy, we can be brave because I'm going to be delivered. I'm not even going to smell like smoke. There's going to be a fourth image that's going to walk around inside, and Nebuchadnezzar's going to, hey boys, come on out. It wouldn't have been humorous if they had said, come on in. But no. He said, come on out. And then they're inspected. Start smelling, no smoke, hair's not singed. I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think when Daniel is put into the lion's den, he don't know either. Years ago, I heard a preacher say this. I wish, and I've thought for the past couple of days who this was, and I just can't remember. But he said something that impacted my thinking for a long time. He said, it is the normal things that can be the phenomenal achievements in a Christian's life. The normal things. And he gave this example. He said, Roger and Julie were in the hospital. And Jim and Jeanette went and visited them. I don't see anybody going, wow, stop the massive lines, party the Red Sea. Very, very easy to do, right? He said, now let's turn it phenomenal. There's not been a person in our congregation for the past 30 years that went to the hospital that they didn't personally visit. Now that turns into phenomenal. You see, if we wait until the big event happens to get involved, we never get involved. Because the big events rarely come along. It's the minor events. So, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego don't know the outcome. And as I said, jumping a little ahead in chapter 6, I don't believe Daniel does either. So we move to chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar's madness. If you remember, he has another dream of a tree. And then he's sent out into the field to live like an animal until God humbles him. Then we move to chapter, chapter 5. Belteshazzar now is in control. And we studied about that last night. Brother Bob Staples taught on it. Belteshazzar is in control here. Daniel interprets a mysterious writing on the wall and foretells the fall of Babylon. Can you imagine? The scenario is there's this feast that's happened, as Bob pointed out. And Belteshazzar remembers, wait a minute, my father brought vessels out of the temple, out of Jerusalem, and they're in storage. Hey, somebody go get them. We're going to drink out of them. We're going to use them for our indulgence and pleasure. He sees the handwriting on the wall. See, you don't take what is holy and make it common. Romans 15:4 is an interesting passage. It says, the things that were written aforetime are written for our learning. Belteshazzar takes holy instruments and turns them into common use. Remember Romans 15:4? Things written aforetime, written for our learning. So how do I make application from him doing that to my life? Well, here's just one example. There's numerous. On the first day of the week, the church partakes of the Lord's Supper, don't they? Can anyone, or would anyone like to raise their hand and tell me something that is more important, more sacred than the Lord's Supper? I'm not saying that anything is less in worship. I'm saying more. Can't think of anything that's more sacred than remembering what Christ did for us. So we could turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and it says, for as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death until he comes. And then it says, if any man shall eat this bread and drink this cup in an unworthy manner, eateth and drinketh damnation to his soul. Wow, that's serious language. Somebody says, well, I just don't know how we could ever feel worthy. No, we're not talking about where God owes us the ability to do this. We're talking about following the instructions given in partaking of the Lord's Supper. You see, we're commanded to do something. We're commanded to remember the death of Christ during that event, right? Suppose someone says, well, this is a pause in our assembly, and they take out Facebook and they're scrolling through. Would that be in an unworthy manner? I think that it would. Suppose somebody said, I know at the Bremen congregation that after the Lord's Supper, they're going to pass the collection plate. So, I believe I'll get my checkbook out, while they're getting the trays ready. And I hadn't balanced this checkbook in a while. So let me, while their trays are being passed, and let me balance. Folks, this lesson, if it doesn't draw your attention to how God views taking what is holy and reducing it to commonplace. Look, they simply took the vessels and started drinking out of them. God said, that's it. You're done. Now Cyrus and his army comes in. History tells us that the Babylonians had fortified their city. And they had a water source coming in through the city, because one of the ways you conquered people is you cut the water supply off and you just sit outside and wait. After so many days of nothing to drink, you're willing to wave the white flag. They say that Cyrus diverted the water into a swamp. So the water was drying up. But remember, it was done that night. You see, they say the Babylonians had iron bars run down into the water where the water source was coming in, and that you couldn't get up under the iron bars. The water would be too deep. They were driven that far in. When they diverted the water, they came through right up under because the water was very shallow. They come in. There was metal doors that should have been shut, but God had prophesied they would be open. And guess what? They were. They walked right in. It's amazing how God's plan is never thwarted. Whatever his plan is what happens. Then we work to Daniel chapter 6. So it took us all that time to get here, but hopefully we won't be too long in chapter 6. Darius, you will struggle, if you're like me, on figuring out who Darius is. Some say it's Gubaru. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that guy's name correct. Some say that Darius is not a person at all. It's a title. So, I don't know who Darius is other than he's the man in charge. But history has very little to say about him. Has a ton to say about Cyrus. Has a ton to say about Nebuchadnezzar. But Darius doesn't have much to say about him at all. So that's drawn a lot of speculations. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom, verse 1, 120 princes, which should be over the entire kingdom. Think of it, 120 people over various provinces. Must have been a pretty good sized kingdom, right? And over these 3 presidents. So you got 120 that are overseeing these areas. Now you've got 3 individuals that's being called presidents in King James Version that then oversees these 120. Of whom Daniel was the first, that the princes might give an account unto them, and the king should have no damage. So we see that Daniel is now, in essence, second in command. Verse 3. Then this Daniel was preferred above all the presidents and princesses, because of an excellent spirit was in him. And the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Can I pause here just a second? Daniel. What did he have to be so happy about? For crying out loud, he's a slave, right? He was taken at the 15 to 18 years old from his homeland and brought into a land that he's had all kind of challenges. We don't want to eat the king's food. Why? Well, because the Jews couldn't eat just anything anyway. Was it kosher? You know, here's some beef right here. Well, has the artery been cut and it been bled out? Or does it look like the Longhorn Steakhouse where you get it medium rare and there's blood looking all in your plate? Daniel couldn't have it. He didn't want to defile himself. So, what is it here that Daniel has to be so upbeat about? Read that again, verse 3. Then this Daniel was preferred above all the presidents and princes because of an excellent spirit. Can I ask you a question? You daring to be Daniel? There's somebody in here that sees me on a daily basis. And boy, the challenges that we face sometimes. I don't know that I always have that excellent spirit. Sometimes people can just, you say, what in the world? Maybe you're like that as well. maybe we've got some work to do if we want to be like Daniel. Because some people, man, they can push our buttons. And I'm sure they've tried this with Daniel. But Daniel is going up in the ranks because he has a great attitude, a great spirit. We need to learn from that, folks. This is how we make application from the lesson in our lives. I'm not a prisoner. Got a very comfortable home. With Joni and I working together, I would say I get to make any decision I want, but that's really not always the case. But I get to make a lot of decisions, unlike I'm sure Daniel probably didn't get a lot of decisions. Verse 4. Then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom. Okay, so Daniel is rising in power. Generally, that means there's people that are not advancing like they hoped they would. And you know what that breeds? Envy and jealousy. And that's what's happening here. Then the president, verse 4, then the presidents and the princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom. But they could not find none occasion or fault. Can you imagine if somebody was running for political office? We just went through an election, right? Where it seemed like every day there was a new charge, an allegation. Not against Daniel. These people did not like Daniel. They're looking for something to find that he's done wrong in the kingdom, and they can't find anything. What a testimony. What a glorious statement about one of God's servants. I wish the same could be said about me or my brothers and sisters in Christ in the community. Boy, we can't find anything that he's done wrong on the job. For as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. Wow, we need to strive to dare to be like Daniel. Where when people look at our lives, they don't find fault. You just can't find anything wrong with the guy. He is just too good. Verse 5. Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. We won't find fault with this Daniel, but we can find fault with his God. See, Daniel's simply following God. Now watch this. Does the same happen today? Mention to people about marriage, divorce, and remarriage. And if they differ with you, they act like it's you. It's really God. You just tell them what God's law is. Mention to people that there's only one church. 1 Corinthians 1:10. Matthew 16:18. And they find fault against you. Notice here that they say, we won't be able to find anything against this Daniel. Boy, that speaks to him, the credit of this young man that had to be taught everything I believe that he could be taught by his parents in a very short period of time. And then he remained true to it. We had Brother Rob Whitaker talking about we have to retain our youth. We need to be parents that bring up children like Daniel. Short period of time, and then they stick to it. Verse 6. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said unto him, King Darius, live forever. You know, I find that interesting. They're about to misrepresent something to Darius, but yet they want to pay the accolades. Live forever. In other words, we're devoted to you. They don't mean we want you to live, 2,600 years. It's not what they mean. O King, live forever. We are your loyal servants. You may know people like that. that out of their mouth they act one way, but their motives are different. That's what's happening here. Verse 7, all the presidents of the kingdom and governors and princes and counselors and captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for the next 30 days, save thee, O king, he shall be cast into the lion's den. That doesn't even make sense. For the next 30 days, no one can ask anybody anything except for you, king. If Joni and I would have been married back then, I can't make any petitions to her. That's because I violated this. And I can't pray to my God. No petitions except to thee, O king, and no prayers or worship to any other god. And by the way, did you take note? All of the presidents and counselors, we've come up with this. I think they left one out, the one that has risen to the very top, right up under the man. Oh, but why would we consult him? I mean, verse 8, now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing, that it be not changed according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be altered. In other words, we've written it, king. We've taken, no need for you to do that. Just sign it. And remember that this is being signed under the construct of the Medes and Persians. Medes and Persians is, if something is signed into law, you cannot change it. Now, there's two concepts as to why that would be. Number one, keep rash decisions from being made, signed into law. Number two is they were viewed as deity. And the God, he couldn't come back and say, no, wait a minute, I made a mistake on this, So the Medes and Persians, once it's signed, there's no changing it. Verse 9, wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Okay, it's signed now. Verse 10, now when Daniel knew that this writing was signed, he went to his house, and his window was open in his chamber towards Jerusalem. He kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God. Notice this next section, as he did aforetime. Have you ever met people that when a rule is brought down, I'm going to fight that rule because I don't want change? That's not Daniel. That last section, as he had did aforetime, he's not saying, now the king made this rule, so I'm going to make a public spectacle and make sure that everybody knows I'm against it. No. Daniel goes into his house, as he had before. This was his common practice. And he kneels down and he prays towards Jerusalem. Don't have time, but as Solomon the people had sinned, he had made a decree or made a prayer that, Lord, if we look towards thy holy temple in Jerusalem, boy, how outstanding is this Daniel? All the things that he knows and had to learn it at an early age. Verse 11. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication to God. Are we surprised at this? They've concocted this whole thing, and I have to wonder, are they going, okay, it's about time? Yep, there he is. There he is. Then they came near and spake to the king concerning the king's decree. Verse 12. Hast thou not signed a decree that every man shall ask petition of any god or man within 30 days, save thee, O king, shall be cast into the lion's den? The king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Verse 13. Then answered they and said before the king, that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah. Well, they had to throw that in as well, didn't they? These folks are supposed to be our servants. Are you kidding? I mean, we're upset because he's second in command. They throw that in. Regardeth thee not, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day. Verse 14. Then the king, when he was heard these words, was sore displeased with who? With himself. He's not displeased with Daniel. He's displeased with himself. That speaks volumes. Can you imagine when something goes awry and your boss at work is mad at himself and not you? How beautiful is this? The king is mad at himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. Now then the king said, okay, what have I done? Now I've got to fix this. That's beautiful. Dare to be Daniel. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. Then these men assembled unto the king and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and the Persians is that no decree nor statute which the king shall establish may be changed. Isn't that amazing? Now they're reminding the king, hey, look, we see you struggling with this. We've already told you, Daniel, what he's doing. You're struggling with this? So let us remind you, there's no change in this. The law of the Medes and Persians. Daniel has to go to the lion's den. King, don't labor it anymore. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the lion's den. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou serve continually, will deliver thee. Can you imagine when tragedy strikes, people that have observed your life would say, you're okay. Your God's going to deliver you. I don't know that he believed this because of his actions. Verse 17, And a stone was brought, laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. Now, wait a minute. This is interesting. Daniel gets put into the lion's den. The king has worked feverishly to try to figure out how to get Daniel out. And the king says, bring a stone and put it on the mouth. You know what I believe this is? I know what you snakes are up to. He may survive the lions, but would he survive you? We're going to sell it so nobody can fool with it. And when we get back, we'll see. But we're not leaving this up to any monkey business. I'm putting a stone on it and sealing it with my signet. Then the king went into his palace and passed that night fasting. He's not eating. Man, this is eating him alive, what he's done to Daniel. Neither were there instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went away from him. You know, I have a question. I wonder who slept the best, the king or Daniel? I don't know if Daniel slept, but we do know the king didn't sleep. King didn't want to eat. He didn't want music played. This has wrecked him. Let me ask you a question. Does it wreck us when we see righteous people being mistreated? It did this pagan king. Verse 19. Then the king arose very early in the morning. Isn't that interesting? Man. Okay. He had to stay in the lion's den for apparently 24 hours. I'm up early in the morning. And I want to go and check on Daniel. He must have loved Daniel. 19, he arose very early in the morning and went in haste unto the den of the lions. Verse 20, and when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God. Is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? See, he told him he would deliver him. Now he's asking, did he deliver him? Verse 21. Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. I want to be like Daniel. When somebody has done me wrong, Daniel had done nothing wrong. Yet, the man who was in charge for putting him in the lion's den, Daniel shows respect to him. We need to pay attention to that. O king, live forever. Verse 22, my God has sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him in innocency was found in me. And also before thee, O king, I have done no hurt. I believe Daniel said, listen, God saw that I was innocent. And king, I didn't do anything against you. But guess what? I survived. Why? Because God said, wait a minute, Daniel, let me do you like I did Peter and just get you out of the situation completely. No. Remember, sometimes when we're being faithful to God, we get left in the lion's den all night. God doesn't just remove the challenge from us. He expects us to go through it. That's what happened to Daniel. But notice, Daniel said that an angel shut the mouths of the lions. Verse 23, then was the king exceedingly glad for him and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found on him because he believed in his God. They inspected Daniel. Apparently no hurt, not a scratch, nothing. Well, these lions must not be tough at all. These must be little kitty cats or something. Well, let's keep reading. And the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel. For every action there are consequences. We learn this in this story. We need to learn it in our daily lives, that judgment day is coming. And there's a day for consequences. And the day of consequences now have come to these men who tricked the king. Verse 24, and the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. Them, their children. Can your actions affect your family? Can your actions affect other people? I don't know that these children had anything to do with it. But Darius said, you, your children, and your wives. Your children and their wives. And the lions had the mastery of them, and break all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. When they threw them in, before their bodies hit the dirt, the lions had attacked them so fiercely that it broke all of their bones before they hit the dirt. That's fascinating. Daniel was in the lion's den all night. No harm whatsoever. We throw these men in and their family, and before they even hit the dirt, they are just annihilated. Verse 25, then King Darius wrote unto all the people, all the nations and languages that dwell in the land of the earth, peace and peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree. Remember, the men made the other decree and asked him to sign it. Now Darius is making a decree. I make a decree that in every nation of my kingdom, men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. How beautiful is that? A man's faithfulness now has driven a king to make a decree that everyone in this nation will respect the God of heaven. For he is the living God and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be forever and ever. He hath delivered and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in the earth, who hath delivered Daniel from the power of these lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. The last point is this. The story doesn't end there. Daniel dies in Babylonian captivity. From 15 until about 90, that was his life. How has God blessed you? He didn't leave you in Egyptian captivity, Babylonian captivity, Persian captivity. What excuse do we have? But what's this? Page 1. What we have recounted tonight, if you go back in time, was 2,630 years ago. How fascinating is it to Daniel that this very night, this audience recounted his faithfulness? Ezra. Anybody ever heard of Ezra? It is under this regime that Ezra is going to be granted to go back to Jerusalem and to spiritually start restoring Jerusalem. Anybody ever heard of Nehemiah? Nehemiah was tasked with the rebuilding of the temple walls. And you know what? It is because of Daniel and his favor that all this is set up. 75 years after Daniel is when Ezra starts the spiritual rebuilding of Jerusalem. 88 years later, Nehemiah starts. Daniel paved the road for so many glorious things for the future. I'll leave you with this. Will you dare to be Daniel and pave the road for future achievements in the kingdom like Daniel? You've been very attentive. I've probably gone longer than I should have, but it is what it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. We got about